I'm going to take you into another dimension here. It's climate change. I'm going to talk about climate change in general. I found that in many of my presentations, many people don't have an understanding of what climate change is all about. And then I would like to do some observations about the impact of climate change on Latin America. I have a couple of slides on Latin American people's vulnerabilities to climate. And finally, I would like to talk about climate and displacement. Is that okay?
It's okay. Seconds. Please.
Maybe it's turned on?
Maybe so.
Yeah, it should be.
Should be. I don't know. That doesn't count as part of my 15 minutes.
Just for the record.
I'm sorry about that.
Okay.
Non-negotiable. No, it's not negotiable. New hero order of
Okay.
Funciona.
Okay. Good. Well, let me talk about climate change first. This is coming from the IPCC. As everybody knows, climate change is a product of global warming, and global warming is a human product. What you see here is basically some of the predictions that we have in relation to climate change. Unfortunately, it's not very clear here, but the predictions are that by the year 2100, we might go any rate between an increase of 2 degrees Celsius and 6. It's a very large increase. This is also coming from the IPCC, and it provides you with a sense of what is this process of global warming for different locations in the world. Global warming is not going to be a homogeneous process. It's going to affect different regions in different ways. As you can see here, there are some areas in the world that even have a reduction in temperature in the Arctic, but there are some others that are going very wild, as in the case of the Northern Hemisphere. For Latin America, again, we are expecting that toward the year 2100, we are going to have an increase that will go between 2 and 6. So red is going to come down whether we like it or not. This is about the projected impact of climate change. What is important in this slide is the relationship between the increase in the temperature and the level of risk. As you can see, the warmer the planet gets, the higher are going to be the risk for people. An important one here is about these abrupt changes. We have a very strong debate about this at this moment, but the tendency is to accept the idea that once we have an increase of 2 degrees Celsius, anything could happen in any corner of the planet, and at that moment we don't know what is going to happen. The Amazonian, huge region in the Amazonian forest could disappear. El Niño could become more intense and cover a larger area, this type of issues. But it's important also to understand is that climate change brings a cascade of impact. Global warming affect changes to weather patterns, which of course affect people's livelihoods, but it also affects changes to ecosystem, economic development, okay? And at the end, peoples are the ones who are the receptors of all these changes. That tells you something about the complexities of climate change and why then we have too many uncertainties in terms of making some clear prediction about the impact. What we know is, as you could see here, we have some direct and indirect impacts. We know that climate change brings risk and opportunities. A lot of risk, okay, but some opportunities too. At least in the Canadian case, the growing season is going to become larger. So, and that is a good opportunity for Canadian farmers. One of the problems with climate change is an increase in extreme climate events. And here you have a graphic that shows you this. This is coming from CREAT, it's a Belgian center that specializes on the study of disaster. And as you can see, we have had an increase of natural disaster in the last, 20, 30 years. There is a possibility that this is an artifact in the sense that now government are reporting more than before, okay? But what is especially interesting here is this little graphic here. Earthquake more or less stay at the same level. However, climate events tend to increase. What about Latin America? What do we know about the way in which climate change is affecting Latin America at this moment? Well, we have increase in temperature. It's around 1 degree Celsius for most of the region. It has been especially detrimental in relation to glaciers and water availability. We know that we have changes in precipitation. In some areas we have increase on the rain. In some other cases we have a decrease. But in addition to that, there are also some changes in terms of the patterns of rain. In some cases we see that we get a lot more rain ahead of time, and some other cases it's late, and that tends to affect in a very serious manner the agriculture.
Ratito, sorry.
Yeah, it's really
Micro.
Hello.
it's gone.
No, it's not working.
This is on.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's on now.
Ah,
It's okay, you're okay, Polo.
No,
Okay.
Okay.
And the other things that we have been observing as a consequence of climate change is an increased number of extreme climate events. Here you have many of them. I'm not going to read each one of them. You could do it from where you are. But as you could see, I mean, we have all kinds of strange things happening in Latin America in the last 10 years. One of them is the cold wave in the case of Peru and Bolivia, something very strange for that part of the region. The same, some of this hurricane in the South Atlantic region. This is coming from the IPCC. These are some of the most significant impacts of climate change for Latin America. This is for 2050, 2100. And as you can see, climate change is going to have a very significant impact. I'm not going to discuss all of them. I don't have the time. However, you should notice, an increase in aridity and scarcity of water resources around all these areas of the Andes. The Mesoamerica or Central America is especially marked in this case due to their increased vulnerability to extreme events, especially hurricanes. We have some significant problem with biodiversity. All this area marked in red, as we paint in this moment, is an area, areas where biodiversity are being affected in a drastic manner. And of course, with climate change, we continue in the same direction. Some of the predicted changes or some of the impact that, of course, might affect people is changing to agricultural production. We know that we are going to have a decrease in terms of the productivity of certain crops. Rice is one of them. there's going to be a negative impact on the quality of fruit. Chilean and Argentinian wines are in a very serious situation, and that's going to be related to changes in the average temperature in those areas. However, we are going to have some positive impact on soybeans. And that is good news on one side, it's an opportunity, but it's also bad because it basically means that it's going to increase the production of soybeans in the Plata Basin. And that has some very serious implications for the environment in that area. We are going to have increasing crop pest and disease. We are going to have some very serious problems in relation to water scarcity. It is being predicted by the year 2100, between 60 and 100 million people in Latin America will be facing water stress. Process related to desertification, sea level rise, and of course, human disease. Malaria and dengue are going to spread all over the place. How vulnerable is Latin America at this moment? We have been doing some research in at least in 3 countries, Chile, Argentina, and Bolivia. And our interest there has been to develop an understanding of the vulnerability of local people to climate events. And what we have been doing here is trying to figure out a process of vulnerability that is related to 2 main things. One of them is the sensitivities to climate, and the other one is the adaptation, the coping capacities of local people in terms of being impacted by climate events. And in order to do that, our argument has been that both sensitivities and adaptive capacity is related in this case to the existence of a variety of resources. This is a very old argument. The more resources you have, the stronger is your adaptive capacity. The less resources you have, the more sensitive you are to climate. Some of the conclusions that we have been obtaining from our studies, something very obvious in the Latin American case, and that is an unequal distribution of adaptive capacity. This working. Hello? An unequal distribution of adaptive capacity that is obviously related to the process of economic differentiation that characterizes Latin America. And the other thing that is very concerning to us, it has been a reduced role of government in terms of the organization of an adaptive capacity. In the case of Chile and Argentina, for example, the existing adaptive capacity has been very much the product of previous government work. However, what we noticed that in the last 10 years is a reduction of this capacity of government to support local people. And that is related to a variety of issues. Neoliberalism is one of them. We have a very serious problem in terms of climate policy. We have a managerial perspective from the government agencies that doesn't allow for the proper distribution of adaptive capacity, limited information, etc., etc. And just to make sure that you people don't interpret this as the argument of an old guy, here we have a vulnerability index that was produced by the International Development Bank. And as we could see here, practically all the Latin American countries tend to be vulnerable. The one that is in better situation is Chile, but there are some other countries that are very high in terms of this vulnerability index. What about climate change and displacement? And here I have 3 or 4 slides and we'll finish with this, okay? It's very difficult to know at this moment how climate change is going to influence the displacement of people. There are different figures going around, like I've seen 40 millions. In some other cases, they are talking about 200 millions people by the year 2050. This is at the level of global. And some other sources now are talking about 1 billion. Somehow, I think it's related to our incapacity to figure out exactly what is happening there. Part of that is related to the uncertainty related to climate change and its impact. We don't know very much about the variation on adaptive capacity that we have regionally and locally. And of course, that is going to affect then decisions in terms of migrations. We have a very strong lack of understanding about the links between environment and mobility. And finally, we have a problems of definition. Sometimes we talk about refugees, sometimes we talk about migrants, sometimes we talk about displaced people. This is basically, an intent to show you some of the complexity that we have between climate change and displacement. Is quite complex because, as you could see, there are many dimensions here that come into an effect. So sometimes we really don't know if the person is being displaced because of environmental issue or climate change in particular, or if it is because economic problems or war, etc., etc. So we need somehow to improve our analytical capacities in order to put some order in this area. Something that is very important here is obviously to have a better understanding of the hazards that are affecting people in this case. Obviously, there are some differences between rapid onset events from slow onset, but this is the one that is the most complicated one. One of the things that we found in our studies is that vulnerabilities to climate tend to be interlocked with vulnerabilities to economic crisis, political situations, etc., etc. So to what extent then, in order to develop an understanding of the vulnerabilities to climate, you need to understand them in the context of other vulnerabilities. And of course, depending on the resource and capacities of people, they are going to adopt different forms of adaptation, and some of them will be related, in this case, to getting out of the region, okay, in a sort of a definitive way, or perhaps, just seasonal. And this is the last thing I want to say, is that in order to develop a better understanding of environmentally induced population mobility or the impact of climate change on mobility, we need to understand that we are not talking only about displacement, but also about a variety of mobility strategies. Second, displacement or migration in this case is only one response among an array of potential adaptation strategies. And finally, that we need to understand that climate is a very relevant stressor. So we need to incorporate the issue of climate in terms of the impact of other stressors on local people. And that's it, thanks. Sorry.